Hello, I'm Dawn Hughes, editor at booktrib.com, where readers come to discover. I'd like to welcome you to another BookTrib Facebook Live author interview. Born in Kansas City, Kansas, MJ Boyandi says she is a mother before she is anything else. She has a dual Bachelor of Science from Kansas State University in Criminology and Sociology. I can't even imagine what that's like, as well as a master's degree in special education from Grand Canyon University. Today, she's here to discuss her first published book, Ship That We Should Never Pass Along and All That We Cannot Leave Behind, a fictional memoir with the trauma based in real life experiences. Welcome, Melissa. It's truly great to speak with you today.
Thanks, Don. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. I know we only have about 20 minutes, so I'm just going to dive right in because I have so many questions about your fantastic book. So this is your debut, and it's really truly an engaging story, providing readers with a fairly intimate window into your past. I know it's a fictional memoir, but we're still going deep in there. What compelled you to write a fictional memoir?
Yeah, the dramatic and often dark humor dialogue and the shenanigans that you find interspersed throughout the book is actually what makes the book fictional in nature. But as you already kind of mentioned, it's the trauma pieces that the readers are going to run right into that were things that I experienced throughout my young life. And what kind of compelled me to write the book is that, I'm in my 50s, and what we know about 50-year-olds is that that's kind of when folks are able to start really truly talking and speaking about these sorts of things. And so for me, it was the right time. And, I'm finally able, at that point that I can, speak to things and say, this is my relative experience.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I imagine the line between fact and fiction sort of gets a bit blurred when you're writing something like this, though. How did you balance that?
You know what? I think I balanced it probably in ways that other people would not think to balance, a memoir that takes its basis in trauma. For me, I allow my mother's boomer character to speak to exactly what her generation wanted for their children. And I allowed those dark, humorous parts that are so true, something that boomers enjoy very much, to come into play together with the trauma. Typically when we talk about memoirs that take their basis in those traumatic life events, we usually only get the survivor's perspective of things. And
Right.
a lot of folks don't take into account, what those who may have inadvertently caused a thing or contributed to a thing, have going on in their minds as well. So.
I definitely want to touch back and get back to those characters, but first I want to talk about the title itself because it's long, perhaps a little controversial in some areas, which is fine, but it feels like there's a message there you want to convey. How did you land on that title?
Yeah, you know what? Again, it's something that I put out there not only to, give the reader a heads up about, oh, you're about to really walk into it, but I think it really speaks to what you find throughout the book. I mean, there's dark and light juxtapositions as you go along, and the characters themselves,
Yeah.
the two different generations, had so many things that, viewpoint wise, that they were so oppositional on. And so that's kind of my way of giving the reader that, what, and a lot of folks that I've read have said, oh, this is so interesting, but it's really and truly dark and light play just all throughout the book. And so giving the reader the heads up that that's what they're about to walk into me, I think was, kind of my way of being also, not only this is an interesting book, but I want to be responsible about what you're really about to get.
That's intelligent, very
Yeah.
intelligent. I think we don't do enough sometimes to prepare readers for what they're walking into. So that's especially with this kind of book that goes so deep. It takes place in the 80s, which is one of my favorite periods of all time. I think fondly of those years. How historically accurate did you feel you needed to be for this book? And were there some key moments that you really wanted to highlight?
You know what? I do say, you know what, and I'm so glad you asked that question. For me, I thought it was incredibly important to stay within the element of the 80s, because the things that I talk about in this book and the dark humor pieces are things that boomers and Xers understand perfectly, but our younger generations aren't always as appreciative of, well, gosh, why are you making light of, these really traumatic things. But, that is really a tool that boomers and Xers utilize. And if we think about who the boomers are, they were, the children of World War II gen parents. And Xers then, we're known as the survivor generation that, kind of raised ourselves. And we have to think about and give credit to, the powerfulness of the boomer generation, of the World War II generation. For as much as we can, shift and say, gosh, there was a lot of things going on that were horrible that got shifted onto the Xers. They were also still very, very, very powerful, intelligent, amazing human beings. And it's something that, Xers who are standing in the middle of, the head kind of generations of the boomers and, World War II folks that are still around. And the very much heartfelt generations of, our millennials and our Zs and our As that are upcoming. Xers stand right, we're that bridge gap generation. And so keeping it in that time frame was incredibly important so that we can bring those things along and bridge that gap.
You did so beautifully. So that's fantastic. Good. The story is told through the characters of Mara and her mother, Gina. And given that this is a memoir of sorts, I wanted to know what about Mara and Gina made them the perfect narrator to tell not only their stories, but yours as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I've mentioned, of course, the character in the book that's, that you find is Mara, who's the teenager that's going through all that trauma. And, that just is my time frame. And that's when I was raised. And I think one of the things that's so important, as I mentioned before, was giving both the boomer and the Xer generations that voice.
Right.
And for me, there wasn't going to be anybody else other than my mom. I mean, by the end of the book, I've tasked readers with following and thinking about, Mara's golden thread, which is ultimately a way of asking a reader to understand just how it is that other folks that maybe, hold on to different values and life experiences have come to know, eventually their own choices, their successes and their failures. And for me, writing into and through my mother's character and giving her that voice, which is the other dominant voice in the book. I mean, that really was her job. She really was an investigator for the state. And
Oh, wow.
she was amazing. She was an amazing human being. That didn't mean that she was flawless, I mean, and so making sure that both characters, have that equal voice is really how I came up with that. And my mother, for me, was always the perfect person to give that other very strong, narrative to.
Right. Would you say that the relationship that you describe in the book is very similar to what the relationship you had with your mom?
Absolutely, in both dark and light spaces. I mean, she ultimately passed away when I was just 22, and there were still so many things that I wanted for her and I to work out. So many things that I still wish that I could say to her and express to her even today. But I think that our relationship, with one another really highlights the importance of that need for, every generation to find forgiveness, love, compassion, kindness and understanding, towards one another. There's a reason that we see Mara refusing to set down that royal wedding commemorative coin at the end of the book, that her mother has given back to her that was previously taken away by Bernie. My relationship with my mother is what helps me to, very strongly convey to readers that choosing to build something brand new together, by taking the very best of us instead of always wallowing in what is the worst of us, is how I think generationally we're going to start really bridging gaps with one another.
That's such a tremendously good message to relay. And your book is really peppered with a lot of important themes. There's, racism, sexual and physical abuse, abortion, so many more. What do you want readers to feel or know once they finish reading the book? Is there a primary message you want to leave them with aside from the great one you just said?
I think that's the best one, but I really do want to say that you kind of landed on the fact that I put, look, there's every trigger warning in the
Yeah.
universe just about on this book. I
Yeah.
want everyone to know that they should take those very seriously. Hopefully, having now read the book yourself, you can probably attest to the fact that I didn't hold back with anything
No.
in
No.
this book. And it really isn't a book for readers who aren't yet in command and control of their amygdala, right? I mean, this is a
Right.
book that you have to, be kind of wizened in your years to be willing to take on and say, I really want to read through this thing. I think I can probably now look through these experiences. But, ultimately, the primary message for me, for everyone, is that I hope to read, I think I kind of put it at the very end of the book where I talk about how, you know, there's no one of any time, of any generation, of any space that isn't going to owe somebody else a dance inside of the Purple Rain. That's, of course, a reference back to Prince and the Revolution soundtrack.
Of course.
And it's my acknowledgement of my own generation. But for me, it's, it really kind of talks about that why each and every one of us needs to start making the choice to bring the very best of ourselves forward together, and that, love, acceptance, compassion, and kindness. We've got to learn to forgive each other. And these days, with all the divisiveness that we see going on around us,
Yeah.
it's clearly something that not a lot of people are really willing to engage in, that forgiveness piece, that compassion piece. It's just, well, I'm just going to judge you and say you offend me and say goodbye.
Right.
And we really have to start working on changing that and understanding each other generationally and kind of fixing these things moving forward, all of us together.
I can imagine this book was somewhat therapeutic for you then, in that sense, that these are all the things that you're conveying to readers, but you must have felt these things too, resolving your past trauma, or at least helping to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I do hope that it's, I think that I touch upon it quite often through things that are serious, but also through the use of that dark humor,
I see.
in particular, that, Xers and boomers understand dark humor,
Yes.
and Gen X children in particular know very well how to speak into and through dark humor. I think the other thing that Gen Xers know about boomers, especially their own boomer parents, is if you're waiting for an apology from a boomer parent, you're going to be waiting a long, 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 long time till the end of time. And so learning to speak through dark humor, which, is a tool that, boomers and Xers know very well how to use with one another, is, I think, super helpful for the younger generations. I mean, these are the things that they're all like, well, no, this is very offensive, I'm gonna put this, but actually it's a form of communication. For boomers, it really is. It's a legit form of how they still understand things, and they'll allow you to poke at them. They
Right.
just won't allow you to cancel them.
Right. Right. So true. I'm watching
Yes.
my 28-year-old stepdaughter navigate life much differently than I did when I was young.
Yes, me too. I've got, 30-year-olds, all the way down to a 16-year-old. And the way, I mean, they're amazing, heartfelt creatures. But boomers and Xers, it's all about the head. So where are we going to start meeting in the middle? And you know what? All of those things are about to shift onto the X generation. And, it's a little bit scary because I think there's maybe 18 or 19% of the extra generation left that's about to have to balance what 81 or 82% of the rest of the population as we move into those, high management positions in life.
Right.
So, but we have to learn to do it. We have to know how to balance out, both sides of what's on us. So, should be interesting.
Definitely. That's one word for sure, isn't it?
And a little challenging, but you know
Yeah,
what? Xers are always down for the challenge. So
that's so true. I in your bio, we noted that you have a background in criminology and sociology, and of course, special education. Did this background help you or hinder you in writing this book?
You know what? I think it really helped if it did anything. I think that hopefully the reader's going to pick up on my own early life educational and work experiences through Conrad's character. But I also hope that by the end of the book, the readers are going to be able to see that I've clearly utilized my time spent in the human services field, period, to really be helpful about turning some of these broken systems that continue to operate inside of their own vacuums, kind of up and out and into new directions. For
Yeah.
me, I'm a crosswalker by nature, and I can see where education, housing, foster care, political, policing systems, health, mental health, and social services actually have the ability to all come together in one space and do tremendous things.
Yeah.
Being a crosswalker, you realize that, oh my gosh, this system has something that this one needs and this one needs, and let's bring the best of these things together in these systems, and we can build out something completely new that really is hopefully phenomenal in nature, especially for our next generations.
We're asking a lot of your book, in some ways. You're asking a lot of your book. That's a heavy load, but an important message.
Yeah. Well,
So
hopefully, if Gene Roddenberry, well, you know what I would say, if Gene Roddenberry were still here, he would probably like me. He'd know that I have the vision to do it. I mean, but you know what? He was another visionary, very similar. If you ever watched or read through any of his stuff, I mean, amazing guy. And honestly, I think it's doable.
I agree. You mentioned Conrad, and it occurs to me that I talked to you about Mara and Gina, but in terms of characters, are all the characters in the book based on people from your past in some way?
They are all people. And, as I mentioned, my mom has passed away.
Right.
The experience that I have with my father passing away is very, very, very close to accurate in the book. I build dramatic pieces around that, but all of the characters do, in fact, take, stories and personality types from people that I know. My youngest sister in particular, she absolutely is my South. I'm her North and she's my South, and she thinks nothing of telling me when she thinks I'm wrong about a thing, and vice
Mhm.
versa, and
Yeah.
we see that in my mother's character and my aunt's character. Ultimately, it's my aunt's character who balances my mother so eloquently in the book, and really and truly was my mom's one person that could, at the end of the day, if my mother was up to something and my aunt thought she was wrong and needed to say a thing, my aunt would put it out there for her. So yes, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You've noted that this book is the only memoir you'll ever publish, but I hope that you'll continue writing. Are you working on anything else?
Oh yeah, I definitely, the
Hey,
writer's bug has caught me. I'm in the process right now of switching gears towards historical romances.
nice.
I'm working on currently finishing up a first of series of 3 novels that I've got planned, which are going to be about a Scotsman, a Scotsman's 3 daughters that find themselves in reverse immigration,
Yeah.
going back into Scotland post the Highland clearances. So I think I will probably continue on this path. I mean, haven't
Good.
been able to quit my day job yet, but definitely the writer's bug has caught me. And I will also put it out there that my next 3 books are definitely going to also be for mature audiences only. I don't foresee myself getting out of writing to like in that dark humor place.
Right.
I've also got some ideas that are starting to outline themselves for a book of horror of all things, kind of Black Mirror type of stories.
Ooh,
Um, yeah, what I
that's a
hope
nice
is
tease on this October 13th, Friday the 13th.
yes, yes, yes. So, and I'm writing them, and I hope that there's something that people will eventually enjoy. But really, what I hope at the end of the day is that I become known as one of those authors that people just kind of seek out when they're in the mood for unfiltered, whether it be unfiltered naughtiness or just unfiltered being told a thing. This is how it is. This is how it really is for people, places, and things.
Yeah.
I hope to eventually hear people running around saying, well, you're clearly in the mood for a little boy Andy today, aren't you? See what's on your mind.
Gonna be our catchphrase.
Yes.
Well, somehow we managed to do this in exactly 20 minutes, so I'm very proud of us.
Good.
And that's all the time we have. But thank you, Melissa, for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me, Dawn. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. The book is called Shit That We Should Never Pass Along and All That We Leave Behind. Please be sure to check it out. I'm Dawn Huse, and we'll see you next time.